Greetings, everybody. I'm Jeremiah.
That's him.
She's Vania.
That's me. Welcome to another episode of the Beard and Curls podcast, where culture and creativity meets consciousness.
And if you're new here, consider subscribing to our YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite platform for the latest, most exciting conversations anywhere.
You ready?
I'm ready. Cue that intro.
What's up, guys? It's your girl, Margot Bingham.
Karen Parsons.
You're now tuned in.
You're now tuned in.
You are now tuned in.
You are now tuned in
to Beard and Curls.
Beard and Curls.
Beard and Curls.
Beard and Curls.
Beard and Curls. Keep it locked.
Today's guest is a clinical and forensic neuropsychologist, author of Stop Self-Sabotage, and the host of Supercharged Life podcast.
You may have seen her on season 12 of The Doctors, co-hosting Face the Truth, or offering her forensic expertise on information discovery, amongst other places. We're talking about none other than Dr. Judy Ho.
Dr. Judy, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you guys so much for having me. So happy to finally talk to you guys.
Definitely. We're glad you're able to be here. So let's jump right into it. And today we're going to do a deep dive into your book, Stop Self-Sabotage. And basically, we know self-sabotage is basically behaviors that keep us from being able to reach our goals. And so to kind of start, what are some of the more common forms of self-sabotage that are out there?
Well, I think sometimes it's like having problems breaking a bad habit or cultivating new healthy habits, or perhaps sabotaging a romantic relationship or even your own career goals in life. It can take a lot of different forms. And for most people, they don't self-sabotage all the major areas of their life. Usually there's only one or two areas where they just keep stalling. You know, they want to make progress. They say what they want to make progress, but something just stops them in their tracks. And I oftentimes hear people say, man, I sabotage my diet, or man, I sabotage that relationship. But then there's no, and then what? What is the next step? What are you going to do to solve that problem? And that's what inspired me to write this book.
I'm actually glad you said that. I was going to say, where did the inspiration come from for writing this book?
Well, first of all, I think that self-sabotage is a universal phenomenon and all human beings have the propensity to do it. But obviously it hits us harder than other times. Sometimes it's a time issue. Sometimes it's a type of problem. So I know a lot of people who do really well in their career, but for some reason they just can't get to a healthy eating lifestyle. And so sometimes it's just one or two things that ends up tripping them up. But all of us have the propensity to self-sabotage. And that's because all human beings, we want to survive, we want to thrive. But sometimes when we feel a lot of fear about a goal, we'll stop ourselves from moving forward because we're afraid of what that unknown might look like.
Yeah, definitely. And I like that. I like how you said all human beings. So that includes also successful people as well. Maybe even someone like yourself.
Absolutely. And I always tell people when I was in my 20s, especially, I was a crazy procrastinator. And it is always something that I have to really keep my eye on. And I used to actually think that procrastinating made me more motivated, that maybe if I waited till the last minute, I would get this genius moment and be able to put together the best implementation of whatever project I was working on. Well, it worked a couple of times and then all of a sudden it didn't, right? Like you just run out of time and then you get reprimanded and then you learn your lesson. But I remember my own limiting beliefs in creating that self-sabotage because I was thinking that I needed procrastination. I needed that pressure to motivate me to do my best. And actually it was the opposite.
Wow. And what are some of the things that you did to kind of help you overcome that?
Well, I had to overcome it if I didn't want to get in trouble again. I remember this happened when I was in grad school and I really missed a major deadline. Like I really screwed up. And I was lucky that it happened in grad school where at least there were professors and other people who could help me clean up my mess. But as you become a more responsible adult, it becomes harder to do that. You really have to be responsible for yourself. But I remember that the moment that this happened, my professor was saying, you can't do that anymore. And I really did hear her when she said that, you know, because I went from being one of her best students to one of her worst students overnight, basically. And it was really embarrassing. And that feeling of shame and not wanting to go there again really motivated me to get myself out of that trap. But I think it takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of self-reflection to understand why you did something a certain way, and then to change your patterns and change your habits.
So what I find to be very interesting is I talk with a lot of people that have desires to either improve their diet, as you mentioned, or to be in a healthy relationship, or to maybe travel more. So they want to do a lot of things, but still feel stuck. So why do we get in our own way?
Well, I think sometimes we have these great goals for ourselves. And to your point, I think it always comes from a good place.
Mhm.
But then sometimes people get overwhelmed in the middle of trying to conceive how they're going to put everything together. And with any goal that is worth pursuing, things get tough sometimes. And it's really easy for us to run away from those negative feelings instead of just push past it or know that it's part of the process. I think while I love positive psychology and all that it's done for the community at large, sometimes that positive psychology makes you feel bad because you think, oh, I should think more positively. And then when you don't, you beat yourself up and then you're in this negative cycle. And I think that's part of the source of self-sabotage, is that we don't end up being able to withstand negative feelings that come up or negative thoughts that can come up while we're working towards a goal that's a really big one. And then whenever that happens, we give up. We're like, oh, this is too hard. Maybe it's not for me. Maybe it's not meant to be. And then you veer off track. But I feel like any goal that's meaningful, you're going to have tough times before you get to the apex, before you actually reach it. And sometimes people forget that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And so, what are some of the life factors or elements that can lead to self-sabotage? I think you have a real cool acronym for that.
Oh, yeah. The acronym is LIFE. And I say, life happens, everybody. It's okay. But LIFE stands for the 4 elements that can be the underlying drivers of our self-sabotage. So L stands for low or shaky self-concept. Now, self-concept can be made up of very many different parts. And so perhaps you have very good self-concept in terms of work and career, but maybe you don't have as good of a self-concept when it comes to romantic relationships. And so if there's a part of your self-concept that's shaky, then that might be a part where you self-sabotage more. I stands for internalized beliefs. These are the things that we learned as children from the adults around us that were important to us. Maybe we see how they tackle difficulties and then we basically adopt their same way of thinking. If you had a parent who was overly cautious, you might grow up to be overly cautious too, sometimes without it being a conscious decision. F stands for fear of change or fear of the unknown. All human beings have a little bit of a fear of change and a fear of the unknown because we want to feel like we're masters of our universes a little bit. But some people have personalities that tend to thrive a little bit more on novelty and others really shy away from it. So if you have a fear of change or the unknown and that's a big thing for you, then F might be a life factor that you ascribe to. And finally, E is excessive need for control. So this is for all those perfectionists out there, type A people, very driven. But sometimes if you can't see the finish line and you can't see how you might be able to control it each step of the way, you might just stop and give up altogether because it's too uncomfortable. And so one good example of this is those brilliant entrepreneurs and people who are just movers and shakers in business. But then when it comes to romantic relationships, they tell themselves, oh, I don't really need a partner. But really, it's because when it comes to a relationship, you can't control everything and you can't control another person's feelings for you.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. So I wanted to follow up on something that I read on page 11 of your book. So this part is about the fear of change. And it says, fear of change or the unknown may kick in whenever you contemplate leaving your job, but you may willingly embrace change or the unknown when you embark on adventure, vacation, travel. I just thought this was very interesting because it's like both situations have an unknown piece to it, but one can provide excitement and the other one can provide fear. So can you share a little bit more about this?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, by the way. And I think that it's because for some people, when they think about fear, they categorize it in different ways. As you mentioned, there's sort of fear of the unknown that's exciting, like, oh, a new vacation spot, versus fear of the unknown, like, well, what if I go for this goal really hard and I still don't end up reaching it? Then what does that say about me? So I think that the difference is when the fear is tied to your ego, when the fear is tied to your idea of yourself as a person and your self-esteem, then the fear of the unknown is a big problem. But if the fear or the unknown is more kind of like an exciting thing to do, like skydiving or going on vacation, it has less to do with your ego and more just like, this is going to be a really fun story for me to tell and a great experience for me to remember.
That makes sense. So what are some unhelpful thinking patterns that can lead to self-sabotage?
Well, I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist, and everything starts with your thoughts. You know, the way that we think about it is there is no real one objective reality. There's only how you perceive your reality, right? So two people can be in a room, they can be having the same conversation, and they could walk away with totally different feelings about what happened. And so your thoughts are really the drivers to how you feel and then how you behave. And oftentimes we fall into these little thought traps, kind of ways in which we categorize what happens to us. And sometimes they become a pattern that might not be so good for us. And so some of the thought triggers I talk about are things like black or white thinking, which means that everything's either all good or all bad. There's nothing in between. You make a mistake and you're a total loser. It's like you can't see the gray, like, wow, I've done a really good job up until now. I've only made one mistake. It's not a big deal, but sometimes we really beat up on ourselves. There's also a type of thought trigger called catastrophizing, where you always see the worst that's about to happen. I feel like this is pretty common right now in the pandemic. I feel like a lot of people are kind of fast forwarding to the future and thinking about the worst that's going to happen. And it makes sense because, again, your mind is just trying to survive and it's just trying to project what is the worst that might happen so I can be ready for it. But unfortunately, most of the times when we catastrophize, those things never happen, but we spend all of this time in anxiety. Another type of thought trigger is shoulds. These are the rules that we make up for ourselves, and we feel like we have to keep holding these incredible boundaries and incredible standards for ourselves, but you would never expect that of anyone else. And so it's sort of like, I should have done more work today. I should be a better parent. I should be a better partner. I should be a better friend. And those types of things, again, cause anxiety and sometimes even feelings of depression. And then another really important trigger is mind reading. So this happens a lot with other people. You have an interaction with somebody and then you believe that maybe they didn't like you very much. And then because of that belief, you might do certain things to actually then create a self-fulfilling prophecy where that relationship goes sour, as opposed to just holding back and saying, well, I actually don't really know exactly how they feel about me. Maybe I should check it out, or maybe I should take a deep breath. Sometimes we are very quick to jump to conclusions about what other people might be thinking of us.
Definitely. And I agree. I'm a CBT therapist as well. So when I hear you talking like that, those cognitive distortions,
Right.
I definitely know that, they can definitely lead to anxiety and different things like that for sure.
Yeah. And as a cognitive behavioral therapist, you also know that the thoughts, they have so much power over you until you identify them. And that most people don't even realize that they're walking around with these sabotage triggers, as I call them, or like, as you mentioned in CBT terminology, it's called cognitive distortions. We don't realize we're doing them. They become kind of automatic.
Like what I like to use, like the exercise is like asking myself, like, is this a fact or an opinion?
Yeah.
So that's how I like to encourage people also to challenge themselves to think like, is this truly a fact? Because a lot of times, if you think it's a fact while it's an opinion, you're just setting yourself up.
Right. And ultimately for me too, my goal is to really get the clients to understand, like, okay, so what are we dealing with here right now? Are we dealing with situational fear, or are we dealing with psychological fear? So really being able to break it down so they can understand for themselves, like, okay, so is there any evidence to support these thoughts? And then like you said earlier, like the thoughts, are the driving force for everything. It leads to the feelings, and then the feelings dictate our actions and our behavior. So at the end of the day, really being able to kind of break it down and say, okay, so what is the driving force behind this thought? Is it supported by anything? And then kind of just breaking it down into situational fear, psychological fear. And then hopefully over time, they'll start to really challenge those cognitive distortions.
Yeah, both of you guys are talking about great techniques here. And Vania, I really love what you said about the thought versus opinion distinction. I think a lot of times we think it's a thought, but it's an opinion. And we think it's a fact, right? I mean, so for example, when somebody says, I'm a failure, that's not a fact, that's an opinion. That's just a belief that you hold that might not even have any evidence backing it up. And that's why, Jeremiah, when you said you got to start you got to start questioning your thoughts. Your thoughts are not everything. It's just a mental event. But sometimes when we think a thought, we think it's already happened. It's already true. And we take them for granted. And I think it does a lot of damage over time to how we feel about ourselves. And of course, the self-sabotaging behaviors that can follow.
Yes,
Awesome.
totally. And if you ask yourself, for example, like how would I advise somebody who is going through the same thing that I'm going through right now? A lot of times people would have a totally different opinion than how they would react towards themselves. So they're able to like step out of that box and be like, okay, so maybe it's not as bad as I make it come across, just because you're not attached to the emotion in that moment when you step outside of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you just described is something that I talk about in the book as ask a friend almost. It's like this kind of similar idea where, you know, if you, like you said, you might advise your friend totally differently. And so for me, I also say ask a friend because sometimes you need somebody to come give you advice, because to yourself, you're so limiting and you're so self-discouraging, but somebody who really cares about you would say something completely different about the situation. So I think it works both ways, right? We really need to check our opinions and get guidance from each other, because sometimes it helps us to take ourselves out of that box of what we were thinking in the spiral. And somebody will say, wait a minute, like, where did this even come from? Right. And once you identify the source, the event is so small, but somehow it created this cascade of negative thoughts in your mind.
Yeah, totally.
Exactly.
The power of fresh eyes.
Yes. We all need it. We all need it. You know, we all need it. And I feel like I'm hearing that a lot right now too from my friends. I think the isolation's getting to them, you know, and I think that they're just in their thoughts all day long, and you know, you don't check in on them for a couple of days and all of a sudden they're like in some kind of crazy spiral. You had no idea. But before, you know, we would be talking a lot more. We might see each other. And so I think it's so important, especially now, to check in on your loved ones, make sure everybody is still hanging in there, getting the support and connection that they need.
Exactly. Especially with the new round of lockdowns that we talked about.
Yeah, exactly. Here we go. Round 2, you know, what are we going to do now?
Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about values. So how important are values when it comes to goal setting?
Oh, so important. I'm so glad that you guys are choosing to ask about this. This is one of my favorite parts of the book. It's what I left till the end, because I feel like you kind of go through some of the other strategies and you think about your behaviors and your thoughts and manage your feelings and your emotions. But at the end of the day, what is it all for? Why are we here? What's the bigger purpose? And that's what values are. We're such a society that is bound by to-do lists and bucket list items. Everything's a list that you can check off. But what are those goals in service of? Is there a bigger purpose here? Is there a reason why you would keep going when the going gets tough? And that's why values are so good for motivation. And values are also so good to make you feel great about a day where maybe you didn't get as many to-do list items done, but you lived your life according to your highest values. So values, unlike goals, can't be checked off. You know, values are things that you want to be remembered for, that are important to you. Things like honesty, adventure, community, spirituality, and so forth. So you never get done pursuing them, but you can only choose to align yourself with your top values. So if your goals come from your values, then you would feel more motivation to keep going with your goal because you'll remember why you're doing it. But also, values just help you to have a more joyful and meaningful life overall. And that's why I love values work so much.
I'm with you 1,000. I mean,
Yeah,
hearing you speak is like
you're nodding.
you're speaking my language.
Yep.
I do that work with clients like early on in treatment because I really find that it's important that they know what their values are. Because, like you said, you know, the values lead to a more joyful life, more contentment. And I feel like with society, we do sometimes take a checklist approach, where sometimes people think, oh, this is what I need to do based on maybe what my parents told me to do or what I see my friends doing or what others have done before me. And so we all have that checklist. Okay, so I'm going to graduate. I'm going to get that job. I'm going to get married, all these different things. And then they find out even as they're checking off the list, they're still not fulfilled. They're still not happy.
Something is missing.
Something is missing. And that's because they put the cart before the horse, and the values, the goals have to come from the values in order for you to sustain them at times when things get difficult. You'll have your why. You'll know why you're doing it because, like you said, the values are the things that we want to be remembered for, the guiding principles for which we live our lives. So I think it's very essential work indeed.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought that up, that sometimes people reach those goals and then they feel empty on the other side. Like, is that it? You know, like, I mean, obviously they're happy for 5 minutes and then they're like, wait a minute, I feel empty inside. Why is that? It's like, well, perhaps you were working on a goal that really had no meaning behind it. Like you said, a lot of times we do ascribe to the goals of our families, of our friends, and we think that they're our own, but have we really stopped and asked, is this what you want? You know? And I think that's why values work is so great. And also the great thing about values is that there's literally no judgment about how you want to live out your values and also which values are your most important ones. Everybody is different. There's no good or bad values. It's just what's important to you. And I love having my patients reflect at the end of the day, okay, here are my top 3 values. Have I done something to honor each of these top 3 values today? And if not, then make a recommitment to them the next day. Like, okay, I didn't get to tap into my value of community. So tomorrow I will make sure to check in with a couple of friends by phone. And that's going to make me feel like I'm in touch with that particular value. I also have a lot of people sometimes who, again, because of their thought processes, they think, oh, well, one of my values is giving. And I want to throw this big fundraiser, but I don't have time or energy right now. And I'm saying, okay, but you don't have to do those big projects every day to live out that value. If your value is giving, you could literally just make your family dinner, and that is giving as well, you know? So I think sometimes people get too big in their heads and they think I can't do all these things. But the great thing about values is that you can do something so tiny and you're still aligning with them.
Exactly. I love that. Like you said, there's no good or bad values. It's your values. It's personal to you.
Right.
And so as long as you feel like you're in alignment with that, then that's all that matters.
That's right.
So why is it important to set SMART goals?
Well, SMART goals is good because once you do have your values and you now know, okay, these are my top values, then you want your goals to derive from them. You want to double check that your goals are actually in alignment with your values. And once you've checked that, then the way that you can make goals a little bit more attainable is to make sure that they are SMART. And SMART goals is an acronym that stands for goals that are specific, goals that are able to be measured. So it's something that can be observed and you can kind of collect data on. They're goals that can be achievable and assignable. So like who's going to do them, and have you set up a realistic time frame and a realistic goal? That's the R. And then T is time limited. Give yourself a deadline for when you're going to achieve that goal. And if you follow the SMART formula, in general, you're going to write a goal that you're not going to feel overwhelmed by, because people will tell me the craziest goals. You know, they'll say things like, for example, they barely exercise, but now they want to run a marathon and that's their goal. And I'm like, that's an awesome goal. That could be a goal for a year from now. But what's your goal for maybe the next 2 weeks? Is it just to walk every day, 20 minutes, right? Let's see how we can bring it back down so that it can feel achievable. And then it can be something that's a building block for a bigger goal later.
I think people don't realize like how successful you feel when you achieve those digestible goals, right?
Yes.
Because a lot of times people think like you're saying, it's like the bigger goals are the goals that matter, but it's like those tiny changes that actually add up, and that when you look back, you're like, wow, and basically you're like growing without even knowing, and so yeah, I think those are sometimes even more powerful at the end of the day than like the bigger goals that people set, and there is a lot of times like a high probability to not achieve them because it's too big.
Yeah, you get overwhelmed, you know, and I think that's why it's great to mix up your goals. Like one of my goals is to always do basically all of my cleaning on Sunday. And even though that sounds like, oh, that's a goal, it's like, yeah, it is. And actually by the end of the day on Sunday, if I have cleaned my house the way that I have set myself to do, I actually feel amazing about it. It's like, yes, like my house is clean. Everything is in its place. I did my laundry. I mop the floors. And so it can be something so simple, even like relating just to like how you keep your space, you know? And I think, again, we should really encourage people, like you both are saying, to think about goals in all these different ways and to have big goals, medium goals, small goals. There could be some goals that are more career oriented, but also some about the tidiness of your home. I think all of them can apply and be really helpful and feels really good. Like when I have my laundry folded, I'm like, yes.
Yeah. No, I can totally understand. It's like even like making your bed in the morning when you wake up.
Yes.
Like the first thing you do, and it feels okay, first step. And it's like kind of like honoring every single thing that you did, and you're really good at that, right? Like sometimes I'm like, yeah, I didn't achieve anything today, and then he would say like, yes, you did. So I had to really like learn to see those things that I don't really consider like an achievement, to honor those things also, and it just makes you feel more productive.
I love that you brought up the making the bed thing. I honestly, that is so powerful. I make sure I make my bed every morning when I wake up. Like the minute I get out of it, I make my bed. It is so powerful. It's so crazy. It's just a small thing to do.
Exactly.
there's some days where I'm like, oh, I don't want to, but I still make myself do it. And then already you're like, boom, like one goal done, like 5 minutes. Yes.
Uh-huh.
I love it. I love it. And I'm the same way. I just sometimes I'll do like 5 small things to start my day, and I'm like, oh, I've already accomplished 5 things, and it's like little things, but to me, those are like goals, and those that helps the mind to feel like, wow, we've already accomplished a lot already. So.
Yeah, like you're on a roll, right? Yeah. And I think this is a really good lesson for people to learn right now. Because again, we're in the pandemic, and I've heard from a lot of people that their routines are slipping, because again, a lot of people are working from home. They don't have to go outside. So then their house becomes a mess. They're sleeping at all these odd times. They're running around in their pajamas until like 4 p.m. in the afternoon. And like, and trust me, in the morning, I would love to stay in my pajamas longer, but actually I make myself get into my workout clothes. And that sounds kind of brutal, but it's actually so good because once you get into like workout clothes, your mind is like, okay, I'm having a productive day. I'm going to be working out at some point. Like there's just another mindset shift that happens from such a tiny thing. But yeah, there's days when I'm like, I would just love to stay in sweats all day. But you know what? Those are my least productive days. I literally will get nothing done if I don't get dressed as if I'm going to work or if I'm going to work out or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. It's the little things that we don't always associate with, achieving, our goals that actually make the big difference. Like you said, growing without knowing. I really like how you said that.
Yeah, it's great. That's some of the best times of growing, when you don't even realize that you're doing it and you're like, whoa, like this is now a habit, right? Like one of the other things that I used to do all the time is, I'd be in my shower and I'd be making to-do lists in my head. And I'm like, you know what? You need to just start to have mindful showers where that's all you're doing, So that's another thing that I've started to implement. But we're always so busy in our minds, and it's like you're doing one thing and you're thinking about another thing. And I really had to just force myself, like, you can take 10 minutes in the shower and not run things in your head. Just enjoy the shower.
Mm-hmm. No, that is so true. And especially with working from home, it's like the boundaries are so blurry. And like sometimes I tell Jeremiah, like, I don't want to talk about anything right now. Like right now, I just want to watch TV. I don't want to think. I don't want to think. Please don't ask me anything, not even a small thing right now, between now and like 2 hours. Like, I really don't want to think.
Yeah. Well, you guys work in the helping profession. You guys need time to unwind too, because you're constantly helping out your clients and you're helping solve other people's problems. And I get that. Like by the end of the day, I just want to watch things like Cupcake Wars. Have you guys seen that on Food Network? Like, I want to live in a land where the worst thing that could happen is you don't make the 1,000 cupcakes. Like, oh no, like what a big problem,
Exactly. Exactly.
I love it. So then you brought up the pandemic a few times. So what are some ways to manage stress or reduce stress during this pandemic?
Well, I think we need to give ourselves a little bit of compassion and grace right now. I think a lot of people are still thinking that we should be hitting it hard at all times. And you know what? Your body and mind are just not going to be there every day. And that is okay. Especially because I don't think that we've been used to having so much unknowns and so many things up in the air for so long. I don't think any of us who are alive right now has ever lived through anything like this. So it's a real adjustment to take. And we have to be kind to ourselves. If we're having a day where we're a little less productive or not feeling as well, that's fine. But I think more than ever, people need to be prioritizing their self-care. I know that there's still a lot of stigma with self-care. A lot of times people will say, well, I'm too busy for self-care. They have all these kinds of ideas about it. Self-care is for people who are too sensitive. I'm not sensitive like that. I don't need that. That's some, weird new age stuff. It's not. Self-care is literally just prioritizing making sure that you have healthy habits in place so that you can be of sound body and mind and do the things that you need to do and still stay socially connected and receive all of the positivity that is still here in this world. So I think that for everybody to manage stress, you have to think about the things that you can control versus the ones that you can't. I feel like a lot of people are worrying about all these things that they have no control over. And there's a lot of those things right now, but let's focus on the things that you can do something about. And every day, spend some time cultivating joy. We have all these to-do lists, but do you have a joy list? Do you have a joy list of things that make you feel happy and lift your spirits even for a few minutes. Make a list of those things and commit to doing one of them every single day. Everybody can do that because some of those things might only take you 5 minutes. One of the things that's on my joy list is just my morning coffee. It's something that I always look forward to. And if I start out the morning that way, I'm really happy.
No, I agree. I like that. I like how you kind of explained it, because a lot of times people don't even realize how simple self-care is. And so being able to really kind of put that in perspective, I think is really important. Like for me, like I'll give you an example. Like I love to just be able to finish my day's work because I may be able to see like 8 or 9 clients in a day. And maybe I just want to watch YouTube for a little bit. And that's my version of self-care. So I want to be able to feel like I can just do that and feel good about that. So a lot of times I think what maybe some people run into is that maybe when they get into these periods where maybe they're not being productive, they become hard on, like you said, self-compassion. They become hard on themselves. Like, whoa, I should be doing something right now. Or I'm being lazy. But in reality, it's like, no, this is your reward for having gone through the day and doing everything that you did to now be able to just take some time to yourself.
Exactly. And whatever that looks like for you, again, it's no judgment, just like your values. One of the things that I know is very beneficial is yoga. I hate yoga. That is not self-care for me. So I've stopped forcing myself to try to do yoga because I know that that's just not a brand of self-care that makes sense for me, you know?
Exactly. And so I wanted to then go back to the life factors. So do you have a quiz that maybe people can go and take online to see which life factor they may need to pay attention to?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to my website at drjudyho.com. The quiz is there and you can access it for free. And there's also a bunch of other free resources for my book too at my website. You can also find out more about my book on my Instagram account at drjudyho as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And again, we have the book. Can we lift up the book so that people can see? I know you have it behind you, but this is what the book looks like. Stop self-sabotage. And so, yeah, definitely. So I think, it's a must read. Everybody should go out and pick that up. But Dr. Judy, obviously, we know you have a lot going on. You've done a lot. So what's next for you? What can we be on the lookout for?
Well, I have a podcast as well. So my podcast is called Supercharged Life with Dr. Judy. So I've been working on that, and it's been a really fun project where I teach scientific tips to improve your life every day. And I also am working on my second book proposal, and it's going to be a book about personality types. And so I'm really excited about that. So that's on the horizon, trying to get some writing done in the middle of the pandemic, and hopefully getting a second book out by next year sometime.
Wow.
That is awesome.
That should be awesome as well.
I'm going to read that one for sure after
I'll mail it to you. Yeah, I'll definitely mail it to you. And I can't wait to keep in touch with you guys. It's so funny how we can meet now on social media and just be introduced to so many wonderful people. Really appreciate what you guys are doing. Love your Instagram, love your podcast, and thanks for having me on your show.
Well, there you have it, folks. That's our show for today.
Thanks again for tuning in.
And as always, like it or not, Beard and Curls is the new his and hers.